There is a famous question. Why do we wear kippah? Why does a Jewish male have to cover his head with a hat or a kippah such as this one? What is the reason? What is the proof? When can you not wear a kippah? Today we're going to be discussing this subject. So, Yalkut Yosef writes, a Jewish man should not walk 4 amot without his head covered, which is approximately 6 to 8 feet. He shouldn't walk that amount uncovered. Likewise, when he is stationary, he should not leave his head uncovered for the amount of time it would take to walk that distance. There is an opinion that the following halachot are forbidden according to the letter of the law. Another opinion says that this is only an act of piety. And there is a third opinion that says that this is only regarding a Torah scholar, whereas for everyone else, it is considered an act of piety. Now we will see that even with that being said, there are other factors that would still make it forbidden. In our times, nevertheless, it is more important than ever to be strict in this matter and to wear a kippah. When one wears a kippah, he is testifying and identifying himself as one who is observant of the Torah, and not the opposite, God forbid. Therefore, anyone who is God-fearing must be careful to cover his head, especially in public, so there will be a clear distinction between a person who fears God and keeps the mitzvot and one who does not. Today, more than ever, if you walk in the street as a Jewish male without a head covering, you are showing the world that you are a Jew that doesn't keep the mitzvot, that you don't care about the mitzvot, even though you might be. But that is the appearance that you're showing to people. You're also casting suspicion upon yourself, as the word in Hebrew is marit ayin. You're showing you're carefree, that you don't fear God, you're rejecting the values of Torah. That's what it's associated with. Furthermore, halacha brings down that especially, minimally, if you're in the presence of an eminent Torah scholar or leading rabbi, you should cover your head as a gesture of respect for this great individual. Now let's break down the halacha. In the Gemara, Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph, Rav Huna, son of Yoshua, always kept his head covered, explaining that the divine presence hovers over my head. He also said in Masechet Shabbat, I deserve a reward since I never walked even 4 amot bareheaded. Later on in Masechet Shabbat, we see a story about the astrologers who told the mother of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, your infant son is destined to become a thief. Because of this warning, the mother was careful to always have his son's head covered. She told him, keep your head covered so that you will be endowed with the fear of Hashem. At the same time, she prayed to God for mercy that the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, will not gain control over the son. The child did not understand at all what this was all about, but he did it. And until then, he was a good kid. One day, he was sitting under a date tree that belonged to someone else, and he was learning Mishnayot, and he was wearing a hood. This hood fell off his head, and he looked upwards, and he saw these luscious, beautiful dates, and he got overtaken by his evil inclination. He climbed up the tree, and he stole the dates. The tree is someone's tree, is someone's tree. It doesn't matter. You can't go take fruits off of someone's tree. That's stealing. It's the same as if you stole from the supermarket. It's the same if you stole out of someone's car. That's someone's property. The Holy Zohar states that one must not go for amot. We said 4 amot, 6 to 8 feet, while bareheaded, since the light of the divine presence above one's head gives him the power of life. This is alluded in the verse of Kohelet. Oil will not be lacking upon your head. The commentator Taz writes that it is forbidden to walk with a kippah, without a kippah, because of the commandment in the Torah, you shall not go in their ways. Meaning, you're not allowed to go in the ways of the other nations. So again, this is, even if you want to bring the other two opinions that said it's an act of piety to wear a kippah, or only a Talmid Chacham should wear a kippah, here we're seeing that when you don't wear a kippah, you're acting like the other nations, and we will see why. The Khatam Sofer writes that the ancient Gentile nations were very careful to pray barefooted. And even when they greeted a king or a prince, they removed their shoes as a sign of respect. Then there's this pope that came, and the pope said, you know what? It's better that you remove, instead of removing your shoes, you should remove your hat. And that's more respect. So he made an institution that one should remove his hat when entering a church and praying. And we see that also in America and other parts of the world, that when a person comes in a church or in a public building or in school, public school, lo aleinu, he takes his hat off. And they get mad. People get, if you go in a restaurant and you're wearing a baseball cap, if it's especially a more fancier restaurant, people will be offended that you're wearing a hat. So they're doing exactly opposite of what the Jews are doing. They're taking their hat off, whether it's their so-called religious place or non-religious place. They're doing the opposite. And therefore, when you take your kippah off or you remove it for signs of etiquette, you are imitating their ways, and that is forbidden from the Torah. Another reason that it's forbidden to remove one's head covering, we see this in Parashat Sotah, the situation where there was a woman who was suspected of being unfaithful to her husband. Then they take her to in the times of the Bet HaMikdash, they would take her to the courtyard. There was a whole procedure to determine if she was unfaithful to her husband or not. And one of the things that they did is they removed the female's head covering, the married woman's head covering, and that would embarrass her. Now, there's another point on that. You know, women today, some religious women wear wigs, and these wigs look just like the hair of her own hair, most of the time. And you might say, oh, but I know what a wig looks like. You go from far away, you could see, you won't be able to tell the difference, or if it's in a picture. The bottom line is that it's forbidden for women to wear wigs. And even the poskim, the halachic authorities that said you could wear a wig, they were talking about wigs that are so ugly and so short that you would make the woman look unattractive. The whole idea of a woman covering her head is to show, I am married now. I belong to another man. Don't look at my beauty, because the hair of a woman is her beauty. And when we cover that, we are showing I'm not allowing you to see that part anymore. Especially when she gets married, the hair shows, and the hair has a power to be more attractive. So the common denominator here is that taking off the head covering is because she was rebellious against her husband. So removing a head covering is a sign of rebellion. So when a man decides that he's not going to wear his kippah anymore, he's rebelling. And that's what we see, that people, unfortunately, who don't want to be religious anymore, one of the first things they do is they stop wearing the head covering. They stop wearing a kippah. The Bet Yosef writes that regarding what we say every morning, because Hashachar Oter Yisrael Betifara, He who crowns the people of Israel with glory. This applies because it's forbidden to go bareheaded. He added, even those who ruled it is not forbidden agree that the way of the pious is never to go bareheaded. Since this applies only to the people of Israel who are commanded to cultivate the trait of fearing Hashem, this blessing is therefore appropriate, thanking God for this crown. The wording of the Bet Yosef here is leaning toward an opinion that is actually forbidden to go bareheaded. We find a circumstance in the Torah where you are allowed to go bareheaded. Regarding the leper, the Metzorah, who slandered and got punished, he gets this disease of leprosy, which is not exactly leprosy of today, but it is a skin disease, and other things happen to him, and he has to go in quarantine. So that person has to go bareheaded for the time that he's in quarantine. We do have an opinion of Rav Meir of Rottenburg that says that wearing a head covering for males is an act of piety. And then we have also in Shulchan Aruch, it says that it's forbidden to walk in an upright manner. And then they use the word forbidden for going in upright manner, as in the previous class that we talked about. But when he talks about going bareheaded, he writes one should not go bareheaded, thereby emphasizing on the haughtiness as something forbidden, whereas going with a kippah is recommended not to do. But Rabbi Yosef writes in Yechaveh Da'at, in his book, even if it was a matter of piety, in our times, those who have rejected the Torah and mitzvot go bareheaded, and it is a symbol of the rebellion. By wearing a kippah, a person is showing that he is loyal to the Torah and he possesses the fear of heaven. And if he doesn't, he's giving the impression that he does not observe the mitzvot and he has rejected the Torah. It is true that there are observant Jews who immigrated to the land of Israel and continue to go bareheaded as they did in their countries of origin. And that was because, I'm adding here, they would get beat up on the street if they wore a kippah. There was a lot of open anti-Semitism in those times, especially in Arabic countries and Christian countries. But now that they come to Israel, where you're free to practice your religion without any problems, that is an issue to, now you don't have excuses, and they should try their best to wear a kippah. There is a verse in the Torah that says, you shall be innocent both in God's eyes and in the eyes of the people of Israel. Although no one has the power to invent new prohibitions, nevertheless it is clear that covering one's head is more than just an act of piety. That's the words of Rabbi Yosef. Now, what exactly causes the fear of God by wearing a kippah? I'm going to connect two things. One was written by the Aruch HaShulchan and one by the Ri. These are both big rabbis of the past, in the olden days, that wrote, the head contains the brain, the source of fear and wisdom. Since every limb, including the head, can be used for good or bad, it is proper to cover it to teach that a person is embarrassed to use it for a despicable reason and to use it only for a praiseworthy reason. Man's intelligence comes from the brain and was created for good. Nevertheless, when a person is free-willed without constraint, he is not using his brain in a remarkable way. He is using it for bad thoughts. And because of this, it is proper to cover the head which contains the brain. What if a person has to go to the bank, he needs a loan or whatever it is, or his business, his job, he's an employee there. So Chacham Ovadia writes there, if you have a valid reason not to wear a kippah, it is allowed, especially if you know you will lose your livelihood because of it. But to do it only because you will feel hurt by them making fun of you or being laughed at, that is not a valid reason to go without a kippah. And also, I add here, if you can wear a hat, baseball cap, or whatever it is, and get by, then for sure you don't even have a reason. He was talking about a kippah that makes you look like a Jew. At least cover your head with something, for the other reasons we mentioned. Fear of heaven upon you, and other things. Nevertheless, in these cases, you should always discuss this with a competent halakha authority, a big rabbi, to ask if in your case you could do that. Because a lot of times a person, makes excuses so they can get away with things. And another thing I want to add, every nation is so proud of their heritage, of their customs, of their clothing. Why should a Jew be embarrassed to go with their traditions, with their look? You have no reason. Next halakha. How big does your kippah have to be? We said cover your head. How much? One opinion says an act of piety to cover your whole head. That means it should be over the whole top of your head. But technically, as long as the kippah is visible from every angle, and it could be seen from the front and the back, then it's okay. But not those tiny ones. You have these little ones that look like cup, the things you put the coasters, you put the cup on it, those little tiny ones, or the ones that are the size of a $0.25. These are not allowed. These are not head coverings. When you say Kriyat Shema and the Amidah, it definitely needs to be big enough to cover most of the head. Making it visible from every angle to onlookers is not enough. So that's why, just in case, if you're in a situation where your kippah is not big enough to cover your whole head, you can put the talit over your head. So in Kriyat Shema, we'll wear the talit anyway, or in Amidah, in Shacharit at least. Or if you also wear a black hat on top of your kippah, then for sure you've covered your whole head. The next halacha states that it is permissible to walk in the bathhouse with an uncovered head, or when you're in the beach. You have to see what that means. How much, what part of the beach, what are you doing in the beach? It depends. Once you're in the beach, you're going swimming, you're jumping in the water, you're playing in the sand, or whatever it is, you don't need to put on your kippah the second you get out of the water, because you're still hanging around in that area, you're getting wet. But if you're going to the beach just to have a picnic, you're not even going in the water, you put a table, you're sitting down, you're eating, or you just came to gaze at the waves. So for those reasons, there's no permission to not come with a kippah. Now, there's a Rav called the Maharitz. He comes to tie all this together. He says, those rabbis that said it's an act of piety to wear a kippah in general, we're only talking about this exact case: bathhouses and the beach. Places where it's considered an unclean place, like a bathhouse, where you can't make a beracha, you can't learn Torah, you can't contemplate, okay, the Shekhinah is over my head, because you're in a place where it smells bad, in a bathhouse, like a locker room type of situation, sauna, steam room, these kind of places. There's smell, there's sweat, and all these other things. And also the beach, since you're going in and out of the water, when you're not emulating the prohibition that we said, that you're emulating the other nations, that doesn't apply, because everybody goes to the beach without you don't go in the water with your hat. So therefore, it's not emulating the ways of the Gentiles. The Ben Ish Chai writes that in a bathhouse you should wear a kippah in the outer chamber of the bathhouse, but once you go in the inner chamber, you're allowed to remove your head covering. That's similar to the beach. When you are in the water, that's like the inner chamber of a bathhouse. And when you return to the place where you're sitting down on the beach, let's say you're on a beach, you swim in the water a little bit, you come back, you sit on your bench, on your chair, on your beach chair, and you're just hanging out, you're sitting a little bit. So now it's like you're in the outer chamber again. So there you put on your kippah, you're sitting around. So that's the comparison. Or like where you pour all your clothes and you have to wear the kippah again. Okay. Eating and making blessings by the beach or poolside. Rav Kanievsky holds that once you're out of the water and want to just stroll along the coast, you should wear the kippah. However, says the Yalkut Yosef, you can be lenient because this is still considered a place of bathing near the water. However, when you are making a beracha on food at the beach, you must wear a kippah. As it says in Shulchan Aruch, Siman Tzadi Aleph Seif Gimel. It says it is forbidden to mention God's name in a blessing with an uncovered head. Also, when you are making Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, you should cover up your head. Now, you should cover up your body also. So you're in your swim shorts now, okay? And you ate on the beach. Now you want to do Birkat HaMazon. And so you should cover yourself. You may put a towel over your legs. Put on a kippah, if you can wear a t-shirt or a towel over you, so you're covered because you're praying to God now. You're making a blessing. You want to be respectful and not be with barely dressed. In summary, because Birkat HaMazon is a blessing that should be done with reverence and awe, you should ideally do it when you are dressed up. Perhaps close to when you are leaving the beach and are done swimming or going in the sand. Only if it is not possible, then cover yourself with a towel around your body.